Louise Bedford here, your host of the Talking Trading podcast. I'm very excited because every week I get to bring you exclusive information, exclusive interviews about what, when, and where to trade. And this week we have a special treat. I'm going to be discussing money mindsets with Shelley George. Now, Shelley is the Chief Operating Officer of Nucleus Wealth. She's also one of the hosts of the Nucleus Investment Insights podcast. So I know that you're going to get so much out of this conversation, and I wanted to rush it to you. So Shelley, it's fantastic seeing you. I'll hand over to you now.
Hi, Louise. Thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. So I guess today what I wanted to have a discussion with you about was money mindsets. And whenever I talk about these sort of topics, for me, it's always bringing it back to why do we worry about our finances, our personal finances? Why are they important? And, for me, what is really important is linking your finances with your goals for how you want to live your life. Like, what is your good life? So I was wondering if we could start there with you. What's the good life for you?
Oh, it's such a good question. Look, I think it's different for everybody. But look, when I was 19, I got all excited about wealth creation. I went to this fantastic function and they talked about mission statements. And I have to say, as weird as this sounds, I have never deviated from what I wrote down that particular night. So this is the good life. I'm going to read it to you because I always like to read it to make sure I get every word correct. To inspire others by leading by example, to create wealth and spread my wealth to those I love and those I choose, and to nurture others to discover their true wealth so that they can change the world. Now, it was big and lofty for the 19-year-old, but I still stand by everything there. I love finding that spark inside of others, that thing that makes them light up and helping them develop that. And also I love inspiring by example. So luckily I get to do that with my own Talking Trading podcast, but also with all of the traders that I helped to train throughout the years. And gosh, I've been a trader for 33 years now. Oh, my goodness.
Incredible.
So I've definitely had a long time to be able to hone my skills and to help others achieve as well. So that's what lights me up. How about you, Shelley?
That's fantastic. And it's a good question. I can't say that I am as well progressed along my journey around what the good life is to me, but I know that for me, it's really working towards having financial security and independence, and then this freedom to really discover what my passion is and what lights me up. And I know that what going along that journey for me, what I love is similar to you is helping people get the most out of their lives and teaching them things. I'm a really passionate teacher. So, the work I get to do on the podcast is really fulfilling to me.
And it's so aligned with your values, which I just love. And I find in life, whenever I'm lacking energy or if I'm feeling a bit burnt out or a bit run over by life, often it's because I'm not staying true to those core values and to that mission statement. It's like a big warning sign, careful, Louise, things aren't going well because you're not on track. So I do like to have that overall guide.
Yeah. It's definitely a great way to stay on track. All right, so let's get into money mindsets because I think for me, it's one of those key aspects that can help you to achieve that good life, whatever that might be for you. And so what I really wanted to start with was, what are money mindsets?
Yeah, look, it is something that everybody has. It's their views about money, often formed in childhood. It is also imprinted during major life events. It seems to stick, often during neural shock, where you're having a new relationship, you're having a new baby, you're leaving home, maybe there's a divorce, maybe there's a death. Those occasions are neural shock oriented. The plus with neural shock is that we learn more specifically, we retain the lessons more specifically so that we can apply them later in life. Now, one of the theories I've been working on, which I know, Shelley, I'm so glad you're going to let me describe here. It's something I've never talked about before publicly. I do with my family all the time. It's to do with the formation of a love map. And I'm going to harness a theory about the love map. It's by a guy called John Money in 1980, which cracks me up because this might have imprinted into me that maybe I could apply it to the money field. So I'll give you an exact example as to what the love map is, and I'll be using my youngest daughter as an example. So, Ash Bedford, she's 15 years old, and she has forever been interested in a tall Englishman with curly hair who wears glasses. That is her identikit as to who is going to be her future spouse, her future lover, the person that she'd like to travel around Europe with. Now,
It's very
I
specific.
I know, it really is, to the point where I can judge whether she will think somebody's hot or not based on these characteristics. So I know exactly where that love map was formed for her. We've got a lovely friend of the family who's got that gorgeous English accent. He's tall, he's so polite, he's really fun and engaging, and he can laugh. You know, he makes me laugh, he makes Ash laugh. It's so wonderful to see their interaction. And that love map, according to John Money, is formed prior to puberty. It's almost locked into your mind, and then you use that as a template for your future spouse, hopefully to pop into that exact template in your brain so that you will recognize that they're a good fit for you. Now, it explains a lot in terms of how some people always go for blondes. But really, look, what we're looking at in terms of money, how can we apply it? Is I do think that our parents, the people who grew us up in some way in the world, whether it be aunts or uncles, whether it be TV shows, whether it be popular culture, all of that has seeped into our subconscious and formed an identikit about the type of money levels that we'd be happy with in life. And unless we spend a lot of time trying to break out of that, if it's a negative type of map for our love map version of money, then that can actually lead to a lifetime of poverty. This is where we see unbroken poverty chains going down through generations because people have trouble breaking out of that childhood identikit picture.
Mhm. Okay. Um, right. So there's a couple of things I want to dive into there. The first one is, can you give us some examples of what a view about money would be? It sounds like sort of getting to this idea of that there's positive views and negative views. So maybe you can give us some examples of each.
Sure. Well, I think there's views that serve you and then views that don't serve you.
Mm-hmm.
And we, as money professionals, need to spend our lifetime trying to weed out those views that don't serve us. That is such an aspect here that both you and I believe in. This is why we're founding these podcasts so that we can host and make sure that people can indoctrinate themselves in this world, strip out the things that don't work, imprint the things that do work. So some of the things that I've found when I was a little girl, a beautiful car drove past. It was so gorgeous. And I went to my mum, oh, look at that car. It is so pretty. And she said to me, they're probably drug dealers.
Wow.
So that's interesting. I think a lot of us have grown up with perhaps a religious upbringing where money is evil, you don't deserve it. It's okay for them, but not for you. It's all right for that little girl to have all of those Barbies, but not you, sweetheart, because that's not what we do here.
Mhm.
And no, you can't have that winter coat from Gucci because that's not who we are. And it becomes a core of an identity that people try to live up to or to disregard. So there are aspects here, I'm sure, if you think about your own childhood, the way that you were brought up, the people that involved themselves in your life, providing both positive and negative role models, that actually is an interesting part of the way we form that love map for money.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think growing up, it was definitely you need to save, you need to save, you need to save. And in the last couple of years, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it was just like blown away by, the differences that there can be in terms of children teaching children about money and how that affects your whole outlook towards life. Money is an integral part of life, and so we're talking about some really big things here.
We really are. And sometimes it can take just one adult in that child's life to make a complete shift, to break them out of that path that they were on. And I do feel that I'll tell you a little story. It's a little personal, and I haven't shared it before, but this is a person who was very instrumental in my life. When I was growing up, his name was Paul Wynne Evans. He's no longer with us. And he said to me at the age of 13, looking at some of my life choices, I guess, that were burgeoning in my 13-year-old brain, knowing about my family background, he gave me a piece of advice that I've never forgotten. So he knew, because he was my father's best man at mum and dad's wedding, he knew that my dad was an alcoholic. And he could see the impact that dad's behavior was having on the four little girls that dad had as children. And Paul and Evans sat me down, looked me in the eye, and he said, Louise, the daughters of alcoholics either become alcoholics themselves or they marry an alcoholic. You make your choice whether those two are going to be true for you. My goodness. It totally changed my view about my future direction. Until then, I hadn't actually questioned, I hadn't taken responsibility, and I hadn't realized that it was within my power to make that life choice, to go down that path, and to choose not to go down that path as well. It was up to me, and Paul really made that clear. So I do urge you, if you are thinking about intervening in a child's money mindset, that you give them something to think about, because that lesson may last them their entire life.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I guess I'm wondering, as you're telling me that, do you find that all people react the same way to the same lessons? And so I guess what I'm thinking in that example is that uh 13 you 13-year-old you was empowered to take that and say, no, I'm going to be in control of my life. But I feel like there could have been another version which actually sort of said, that's all there is for me. I'm not going to try and do anything about this because it's out of my control. That's it.
Yeah, you make a really valid point. It is dependent on the way the message is delivered and from who, and also the recipient. So, one of the things that I find fascinating, and I think of this in relation to my two children, there's a theory put forward by Dr. Thomas Boyce, and it's fantastic because it talks about dandelion children and orchid children. So I'll tell you a little bit about that and we'll see if we can apply it to what you've asked. So I've got two children. My eldest is Ramona, and Ramona's 19, and I've got Ash, who's 15. Now, both girls are very different people, very, very different people. Ash, we always thought when she was even 2 years old, you could pluck her out of our family, dump her with a team of athletes or Maasai warriors, she'd be fine. she'd forget about it. She'd move on with her life. She'd just totally be fine because she didn't need that constant nurturing. She's so independent and so broad in her acceptance that she actually has no problem fitting in at all with a group. So that dandelion is like that little, it's a pleasant weed, okay? We like dandelions, so don't think I'm calling my youngest an unpleasant weed. But you can take that dandelion and it can position itself anywhere around the world. It can be in any soil. It doesn't need particular light. It doesn't need particular circumstances for it to thrive. It can do anything it wants to do because it's got that type of character within itself that it doesn't need particular nurturing. Wow, isn't that a beautiful thing to have as a child so that we don't really need to think too hard and we can look like a superstar as a parent? Now, let's look at the other side of this. This is the orchid child. My eldest, I would consider, is a complete orchid child. We need to have the right environment. We need routine and structure. We need no loud, sudden noises, no loud, sudden decisions. There has to be a total understanding about this child's sensitivities in order for this child to thrive. So think of the orchid in the hothouse. We need the right temperature. We need the right moisture. We need the right soil. Every aspect of that orchid's environment has to be taken into account for that orchid to thrive. Now, here's the interesting thing. Thomas Boyce was onto something because once you get the right environment for that orchid, they become incredibly beautiful, amazingly productive, massively inspiring to everybody around them because they've had the right environment. It's settled down their anxiety and their nerves, which often orchids are quite subject to. So even people on the spectrum have a lot of the orchid side to them, and then they can thrive. So knowing that I had a child of each, knowing that one was kind of a little bit easier and I didn't have to fuss too much, but the other required a specific condition in order for her to thrive, that was actually inspiring to me as a parent. So I think a lot of traders, a lot of investors are the same. You can have somebody who has exactly the right environment, but they're sensitive. They are flinching at every market gyration. They are really having to focus on their own education. They're having to strive a lot more than the average type of trader. And that, I think, is the orchid type of trader or the orchid investor. And then you have the dandelion investor. Everything they touch turns to gold. They can thrive anywhere. It doesn't matter if their package goes down. Oh, heck, it's only software. I can trade without that. They can do with very few environmental impacts and still come out on top.
Yeah, all right, that's incredible. So, we've spoken a lot so far about childhoods and how they create this environment for where you might be now as an adult. But it sounds to me that if you want to work out as an adult now where you're at and how to move forward from it, do you feel that you need to have some level of self-awareness to be able to look inwardly and see what's going on? Are you a dandelion or an orchid? What might your money love map be?
I agree. I do think it all comes down to self-awareness. And I often think, especially because I'm used to dealing with traders, so I'm using the word trader, but of course we can use the word investor in place of trader. The money mindset for both, it's the same. So
But just
I
on
do.
a side note, how would you differentiate the two?
Yeah, it is a good point. I'll get onto that actually, because I do think that is an important aspect. So I'd feel that with traders and investors, that as long as we are self-aware, then we will always be able to keep growing our equity. Very rarely will I find a very oblivious, non-self-aware person become exceptional in their field. So if we can keep on working on ourselves as hard as we work on our trading systems and our money management, then we're very likely to rise to the top. So the differences between traders and investors, it's not as extreme as perhaps you'd think. So I think of as a trader as somebody who's prepared to get out on a predefined level during a potential period of weakness. So often traders can trade multiple markets. They can have different time frames that they're trading and different universes that they trade. And often traders are very open to creating a trading plan. Now, all of those aspects, I feel, also need to be applied to the investing horizon. So investors generally have a longer term time frame. They're considered to be a little bit less likely to exit when things go down. But I do urge every investor out there to set a stop loss and to get out. If you have got a position that is not booming, you have to work out when you're going to exit. You really do. There is no point sticking with a dog just because you're loyal to that particular share. It's going to sweep your equity down as you actually have to get your ego out of the way. So
No, I absolutely want to jump in there and agree with you. I mean, institutional investors or fund managers, they are, they're looking at investments all day, every day. And it's always, if they're in an investment, in a company, they're continuing to look at the information on that company with the question, should I still be here? Has something changed that's fundamentally changed my perspective on this company and I need to get out? So it's exactly the same thing, I think.
yeah, I think so. I think sometimes we're quite binary in our views. We think we have to fit into one field or the other. In actual fact, in the big Venn diagram of life, there is more grey area there than black or white.
Great point. Great point. All right. So I think we've done a great job so far setting a foundation for money mindsets. But the most exciting part for me is what lessons can we give people to help them change? If they have money mindsets that aren't serving them, or if they have not the self-awareness that they would like to have, what are the things they can do to progress along those journeys?
Yeah, the first step is actually noticing, isn't it? As with all things. Oh my gosh, I'm putting on weight because I keep on eating chocolate bars after 11 at night. What is the actual issue that you are facing? And if you can articulate that very, very carefully, write it down, make sure that you journal on it. I think journaling is very underestimated as a psychological strategy for a pillar of good health, overall
Absolutely.
health, emotional health.
I couldn't agree
So,
more.
yeah, I'm very big into writing in my journal. I've actually got it just here. I write every single day in my little book, and it's very relieving of all sorts of things. You
You
have an
must have a few
issue.
of those books if you're writing every
Yeah,
day.
I do actually. This is my portable one. For those of you watching on YouTube, I'm holding up a small gold book. It's just a portable one, so it fits into one of my handbags. And then I've got my larger ones as well. So I've got them scattered throughout the house so that I never have an excuse not to write.
That's great.
So, yeah, I do think that that is one of the aspects. So, first of all, becoming self aware, aware of what your money mindset is doing, aware of your blind spots. Sometimes our spouse or our friend needs to help us. It's very
Mhm.
hard to actually read that label of the jar from the inside of the jar. Sometimes you need somebody outside to tell you, okay, these are the areas that you need to think about. I'll give you an example. I've got a beautiful trader. I've been helping him for years. He's very good at what he does. He comes from a very structured tradie background, so he's very used to building plans and sticking to them, which has helped him a lot in the trading arena. He actually said to his wife, look, I'm trying to work out where are the things that I need to improve on in my mindset. And she said, I know exactly where. You haven't had a positive thing to say for the past 2 years. Oh my gosh. So he had not spotted that himself. He needed somebody in a caring way, let's hope so, to provide that insight. And now, the thing that I love most is that this gentleman is immersing himself in education. He's doing everything he can to develop that money mindset, to go that extra step, to be open and vulnerable to mentors who can guide him. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. I've actually physically even noticed a softening in his face over the last year. He's so much more attractive now. I think it's so fascinating to see how sometimes the way we feel inside can translate to the outside in our facial features.
That is incredible, absolutely. But that energy that you're carrying, it reflects in everything. Especially how you're holding yourself, your muscles.
Yeah, I really do. And it's that ease of being able to accept some critique and being able to alter your behavior. That's something I think every child is trying to struggle with, let alone every adult. I think it's something that we often as adults have ego that gets in the way, and we don't want to hear that, your baby is ugly. You don't want to
Nobody wants to
hear
hear
that.
that.
So, for us to actually grow as traders and investors, we really do need to be open our minds, be expansive with our views, and realize that we have a lot of growth to do. We don't have to cap our potential. We can keep on developing our skills to way into our hundreds. Why not? I was chatting with a gentleman at the gym yesterday. He's 92 years old. I said, "What are you going to do after this?" And he said, "I'm going home because I'm just obsessed with these physics videos. This is what I'm learning at the moment." And I'm just like, wow, I love it. I love that attitude. School never has to be out for the professional.
That's fantastic. I am so excited for physics videos when I retire. That sounds amazing. Um, all right, so I think what I'm hearing or pulling together is that the journaling is really important, but I feel that what can really help with that is that if you do have a mission statement, because you know, directing your growth can maybe be more challenging if you don't know where you're trying to direct it. So you could go on a number of different tracks if you're not exactly sure where you're trying to get to, and so it might take you a bit longer to get there. But I mean, that said, it's like for myself, I probably don't have a mission statement yet, but just a goal to get one. So even that's enough. But to know where you're trying to get to, I think it helps you then when with your self-awareness and looking inwards to see where some of your roadblocks might be. If you know where it is you're trying to go, then you can say, all right, so I'm trying to do these things, but this is what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, I
Um,
love it, Shelley. You're quite right. And I even think one step before that mission statement would be to define your key values. So I'll give you perhaps my top three to give you an idea about where I'm coming from with values: love, nurture, and inspiration. They're the three things that I find light me up. They help me with energy. They help me say no as well. Like if something isn't going to be in one of those three buckets, love, nurture, or inspiration, I need to say no to that decision because it's just not going to suit me long term to say yes to something that is against my core values. So if you can actually work out what are the specific things that are really important to you at a very intrinsic level, that
mm,
very core visceral level that sometimes we have trouble confronting because it is quite confronting to look that far into yourself. Define those values first and then work out what can I do in the world to spread those values and do as much good as I possibly can for myself and those that I love. So that's your first step, that inner circle, who you can ripple effect influence in your inner circle.
that's a
Once you've
really good
understood,
point. How would you sort of I mean, so because when you started talking about this, I was thinking, okay, core values. Is it um, you know, when you look in the mirror, how do you define yourself? But I actually don't think that that is the definition of it, because I think sometimes, and this can come back to again imprinting from childhood, what your definitions of the right or good person to be are. But it's actually it's it's not that. It's, and how would you define what it is? You know, is it what lights you up, sparks joy in you, or you know, how do you actually get to what your core values are? I mean, you say it and it sounds so obvious, but actually, I know from my experiences doing work on myself that there can sometimes be this conflict between who you think you are in your identity and actually what it really is, and that can be a big challenge to work through.
Yeah, you're quite right. It absolutely is. And it's not only what sparks joy and what lights you up. I think it's also you have to look at your actions. So, what is your action in the world done for yourself and for others where you are proud? You are proud of that action. You're
Mm.
proud of the action itself and all the results. That way you're operating in flow as well. Everybody has a different timing type of aspect with this. When do you lose track of time because you're so involved in a project? Nothing else can actually matter. It's just you and that project. That's a really good physical place to start because you'll know what those things are. And sure, for some of us that are more extroverted compared to more introverted, those things will be vastly different, just vastly different. So I think you do have to have a lot of self talk going on about this. Go sit at the beach. Go and sit under a big tree. Look up at the glory of the leaves. Give yourself time because we try to force this. We try and sit inside a little office with concrete and plastic and glass, and we think we're going to come up with some massive philosophical statement that we can use for the rest of our life. It usually doesn't happen that way. Usually it's a rather painful process of extraction.
I love that honesty. Um, I also really love this idea of flow, because I think that you're spot on there. That's where you start to find the person you are when you're looking at the things that you're really, you know, struggling with. This is such an uphill battle, and then other things that just like I've completely lost any sense of the world around me, and the talk in my head is gone. It's just this. That's, and I'm just in it. I'm present basically. So yeah, thank you. That's it. I think that's a great place to start with this sort of stuff. Um, I think as well, what I was saying before about this conflict between what you think your identity is or should be, is when you start trying to think about what your core values are, and looking at what's flawed, what isn't, and sort of maybe having to say to yourself, I might not actually be my identity, or who I am might not be who I thought it was, and now I might have to step away from that. As you said, it's painful. It's a lot of work, but what it can do is help you open up to your vulnerability, and also criticism. And I wanted to mention criticism because in one of my jobs, we were doing a team building exercise, and you know, we wanted to encourage criticism in the workplace. And it was put to me that criticism is a gift. It's not something that you should feel defensive about and put your walls up. And I know, I think I am one of those people, but certainly working towards trying to accept it as a gift. And when I feel myself in that state of defensiveness, I do try to think, okay, this is a gift. This is actually a gift. You know, the wife that said, you know, you could give some positive thoughts, you could have some positive thoughts or positive comments, was actually giving a gift. And as you said, he seems to be lighter now after taking that on board, and doing work with it. So,
Yeah, I like
uh,
that. And one of the things that I think is difficult, especially as an adult, where we do have all this ego defensiveness, particularly around money, because it does strike to the core of survival, let's face it. I mean, it's just right up there with oxygen, isn't it?
absolutely,
So
yeah.
to hone your skills when you're feeling defensive with some automatic statements. Now, my business partner, Chris Tate, has helped me with this. I'm not the quickest thinker with the comeback. You know how some people are very quick with the
Me
comeback? Somebody
either.
says something sarcastic and then somebody just cuts in
Yeah.
right over the top, and like before you know it, it's fascinating to watch. That's not me at all. I usually am a little shocked. The deer in the headlights type of person, more to the point. So Chris Tate has actually helped me with this. He said what we need to do together is find some statements that you can use when you're feeling that level of shock. Now, the big one that I use, and I probably overuse this in almost every circumstance, is I say, tell me more.
Oh,
So
good.
if I'm not understanding what they're saying, if I'm pulling back, if I'm getting that visceral kind of gut feeling where my stomach flips over and I'm feeling very uncomfortable, then I say, tell me more. Not only does it buy me time to think, because that's very important, but it also perhaps will reveal a curiosity to allow you to get that correct understanding. Maybe they didn't quite mean to express it that way. Maybe you took it the wrong way through defensiveness. And that statement has got me out of so many potential embarrassments. I cannot tell you, Shelley.
That is such great advice. Thank you. I definitely can do that more often. I'm going to take that on board, and I'll let you know if I feel like I'm overusing it as well. So thinking about identity has sort of, prompted me to something we talked about before the show, which was this idea of there being a difference between self-worth and net worth. So I was wondering if you could talk us through the differences between those.
Yeah. We are just so entwined, aren't we, in this society that if you are earning a particular amount of money, then all of a sudden you're worthy and you'll earn the adulation of your
Mm.
friends and neighbors. It is interesting as well that a lot of it originates with evolutionary biology. So we are talking about competition for potential mates. That is why, at a very deep level, this is so important. Men think if they drive that fancy car that they'll have women flock to them, and it's because of sex. That's what this is what we're talking about here. The very core is because we all want to mate successfully. So let's have a look at some figures here. I think this is quite interesting. This is the level that I think we need to be aware of as well. I know we're talking about thinking big here, but we also have to look at what can happen if we get things wrong. It is an actual threat to us. There was a survey by Go Banking Rates. It said 64% of US workers are expected to retire with less than $10,000 dedicated in savings. My gosh. The other 36%, they're not in great shape either. Just over 12% say they'll retire with $100,000 to $500,000, and only 4% are expecting to retire with greater than $500,000. So, yes, we are talking about a threat. We're talking about a threat to our identity, but also a threat to our survival, to our ability to attract a mate. This is about as serious and hardcore as it gets. And that's why money mindset is so intricately intermingled with trading psychology, investing psychology. If we can move our mind, if we can elevate it, the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. It will have a ripple effect into the other areas of our life. I've got just one more aspect to add to this because I think it's very important to consider. Many people are trading as a part of a partnership or as a couple or even best friends, as a spouse, somebody that they're living with. They are trading not in isolation. So here are the figures. This is from Matt Bell, the author of Planning for Fewer Financial Fights with Your Spouse, which is a fantastic name for a book.
Mhm.
4 in 10 married couples have serious recurring arguments about money. Those who have a written budget are 30% less likely to argue regularly than those without. So step one, get a written budget. That tells you something. Plus of the battles, 49% argue about what to buy or not buy and at what price. 33% fight over debt and 26% fight about savings. So, how can we use this? If you are trading or investing and you have got a spouse, you had better keep them informed. You had better set limits. If you lose 25% or more of your combined money, then you will stop trading and seek a higher authority. Absolutely essential, not only for your financial livelihood, but also for the sake of your relationship.
Mhm. Another point to prove how intricately combined finances and life are. Not that I imagine anybody needed convincing at this point, but still.
Absolutely. I do think we need to look at the broader extent about what our actions do. There is an impact there. We have to consider it not only in terms of legacy, which everybody loves to talk about. Sure, I love an optimism bias, thinking about the future in terms of what lessons can we leave for our children and in our children. But it also has an immediate impact how we think about money now.
Yeah. All right. So, what about mistakes, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen people do when they're dealing with money?
Oh, the big one would be patience. My gosh, we all want it now, now, now. Bring it on. Like yesterday, actually. Let's click our fingers and
Yeah.
get that all to flow into our account.
Well, that's
Most
not
people
getting
don't.
any easier with the likes of Uber Eats and
Correct.
the way
It's all
the
just
society's going.
feeding into our little instant delayed gratification, forgetting about what that means. If you think back in our parents' day and our grandparents' day, they had much different horizons in terms of time frames for expectations. Now we're expecting it all at our doorstep. So I do think patience is very important. Reminding yourself that you're playing the long game. There is a learning curve here. Education is required. Following in the footsteps of others is required, and that it's okay to make some mistakes along the way. In fact, it's necessary. I think you always learn more from your own mistakes, even though you can try and take on other people's errors to be a part of yourself. If you shoot yourself in the foot, it really hurts, and you probably won't want to do that again.
You really feel it, don't you, when it's your mistake?
You really do, which is the other aspect of that is keeping your position sizes small. Make sure you don't put too much into one asset class, whether it be shares or crypto or ETFs. And oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
mentioned the crypto word. Just remember that spread of assets is extremely important and to evaluate that over time. Rebalancing is such an important aspect, and being able to have that regular maintenance schedule is essential. So I know I'm speaking your language, Shelley. This is probably reciting many of the things that you hold dear. Yes.
Absolutely. I think the concept of importance of mistakes is just it's key. It's crucial to me. So and I think what is really important about that is a mindset, and it comes back to this sort of are you going to take criticism as a gift or be defensive about it? Are you going to take your mistake as a gift, as an opportunity to learn and grow? Or are you going to beat yourself over the head about it? And in doing some preparation for today's show, looking at mindsets, one of the messages I came across was forgive yourself, your mistakes around your money. Just make sure that you learn from them and you grow from them. So
I
be
think
kind to
forgive,
yourself.
but don't forgive too quickly.
Okay.
So I had my beautiful friend who's no longer with us, Dr. Harry Stanton. He has had an influence on my life since I was 15 years old, and we co-authored Let the Trade Winds Flow, trader, but psychologist to traders. Okay, just to give you that background. Harry and I used to talk about this all of the time, where we see people forgive themselves so quickly that they forget to learn the lesson that that particular event was trying to teach them. So, first of all, I would suggest analyze that event. What did you do wrong? What were you personally responsible for from an internal locus of control aspect? What can you truly say you did badly? Write it all down. Make sure that you do understand your hand in this disaster, whatever that disaster is. People who seem to skip that step go on to repeat the same mistake again and again and again. And it's because they're not using their own data to be able to make better decisions in the future.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Hopefully, if anyone's taking any lessons away from today, it's that the important thing here is growth, it's personal growth. And so you don't you're not growing if you continue to make the same mistake over and over again in the same way. So absolutely, you've got to take those lessons.
Yeah. Oh, Shelley, this has been delightful. Thank you so much for letting me explore so many of these areas that I've never discussed actually in this level of detail publicly. And I just think we're a kindred spirit. I know you're coming more from the investment side of things. I'm coming more from the trading side. But I do urge for everybody listening to consider the similarities rather than looking at the differences, because that is really where the core of money mindset will really help drive you on and help you excel as a trader or as an investor.
Absolutely. Well, Louise, it's been my absolute pleasure. So thank you. But before I let you go, I did want to just ask, where can our listeners get in touch with you or hear more from you?
Sure. Come to my website, tradinggame.com.au, tradinggame.com.au, and enter your details. I'll be able to send you my free trading plan template. That will help guide your trading and investing. It will give you specific questions that you need to answer so that you can excel. And you'll also get, as a bonus, my free Trading Made Simple 5-part e-course. So I'll send that to you so that you can become a superstar in the markets and you can apply so many of the things that we've discussed in today's episode into your own trading so that you don't self-sabotage and that you go on to create riches in the market. And Shelley, I'm really curious as well, because I know a lot of your listeners are going to be my listeners as well. We seem to attract the same type of people. So sure, visit me at tradinggame.com.au, but can all of my listeners hear about how they can contact you?
Absolutely. So nucleuswealth.com, no .au, so nucleuswealth.com, or you can get in touch with us on contact@nucleuswealth.com or 1300 623 863.
Wonderful. And everything will be in the show notes. We're going to include links, more about me and more about Shelley, so that you can research that as well. So make sure you check out our show notes for both episodes in both of our podcasts. This has just been such a fun collaboration. Thank you so much, Shelley, and onward and upward.
Thanks, Louise.